What's up, YouTube? The Zen Trekker here. Sitting here waiting to get unloaded, but kind of early in the morning. I guess they're not open yet, and I'm going to be waiting here for a little while to get unloaded. So anyway, I figured it's a good time to post a new video. And I did actually get a request from somebody to talk about how we get paid. So as if you've watched my videos before, you know I work for JB Hunt, local Intermodal out of Southgate, California. So I'm running out of the main rail yard in LA, the BNSF LA ramp, as well as the Commerce ramp. I also go up to San Bernardino every once in a while, but mostly it's the LA ramp and the Commerce ramp. Right here, like kind of on the Commerce and Vernon border in Southern California. Anyway, as a local intermodal driver, basically I figured what I'd do is talk to you about like what my average day looks like and then how we get paid. So the average day is pretty straightforward. My day usually starts at the rail yard. I pick up a load and then bring it to a customer for delivery. And then I will either do a drop and hook, pick up an empty from the customer, or I'll do a live unload like I'm doing this morning, and then I'll take my empty and do a pickup, which then goes back to the rail yard, and then we kind of start all over again. Now, one caveat is that here in LA, we're very heavy on pickups. We do more pickups than deliveries, probably twice as many pickups than deliveries, which means we do more picking up from a customer and bringing it to the rail than picking up from the rail and bringing it to a customer. Now, some days, you know, we have more deliveries than others. So usually the start of the week we'll have more deliveries, you know, than at the end of the week. But generally it's about 2/3 pickups and 1/3 deliveries. I also am on the list for the regional Overflow. So we have regional drivers that drive like the Western United States, mostly California, Nevada, Arizona. So most of their trips are like overnight trips, but sometimes if we have a lot of loads and they need some help, they'll send some of us local guys on some of the shorter runs, like within like 200 miles or so. So I sometimes get those loads, which means my day is a little different. I mostly drive. I may do one delivery or a delivery and a pickup coming back. But most days I average about four loads in a day and about 200 miles, like 150 to 200 miles in a day. And if we get busy, I might do, you know, I might work some extra hours and do an extra load. When we're slow, I may only do 3 loads. But for the most part, 90% of the time, I'm doing like 3-4 loads, about 150 to 200 miles. I average about 250 to 260 a day. I work about 10 hours, 10 and a half hours a day. There are some guys who will run their clocks out and work, you know, 13 hours a day, 13 and a half hours a day, and they'll make more money. There are a lot of guys who will just work the minimum 9 hours a day. And you know, those guys are generally doing 2 or 3 loads and making about $200 a day. So one good thing, and I think I've talked about this before, about JB Hunt, at least a local intermodal, is that they're pretty flexible with the drivers. Depending on how much money you want to make and how hard you want to work, you know, what kind of hours you want to do. They're pretty flexible in working with the drivers and you know, giving you the time that you want to do, and you know, the result is how much money you want to make. So that kind of leads me into how we make our money, because we don't work hourly. So I know there's a lot of companies out there that have local drivers that work hourly. You know, and they generally make somewhere between 20 and $25 an hour. A lot of them are union jobs. Some of them are not. But here at JB Hunt, we get paid by what they call activity pay. So we get paid by the mile, by the load, plus there are certain things that will move us into some hourly for a period of time, and some things that they call exceptions, which are like special issues that come up that you get paid extra for. So let's talk about the mileage and the load pay, which is the primary way that we get paid. And what I will tell you is that depending on the hub you're at, like what city you're in, what terminal you're working out of, everybody gets paid a different rate depending on where you're working out of. So I'm not familiar with the exact pay at other terminals, but I can fill you in on what the Southgate terminal pays. And as far as the other terminals, basically, I think how they work it, and I'm not totally sure, but the impression I get is that the activity pay changes like based on the load and the mileage, depending on how I assume they want you to be incentivized. So if they want to incentivize you to do more miles, they pay you more for the mileage and less for the loads. If they want to incentivize you more to do more loads, and they don't care quite as much about how many miles you do, they pay you more for the loads and less for the mileage. So here at Southgate, we get paid 45 cents per mile. And then for each load, for a live load, we get $48, and for a drop and hook, we get $32. That's probably pretty average, because I think at Southgate we're kind of a balance between miles and loads. And then, all right, so in terms of mileage per load, and then let's say we get stuck at a customer for a period of time. So the load pay, the $48 for a live load covers you for the first 90 minutes that you're at the customer. If you're there for more than 90 minutes, we move into detention pay. And then the detention pay is $15 for the first hour after that first 90 minutes, and then $20 an hour after that. And then for a drop and hook, we start getting that same detention pay after 60 minutes. And typically, it's very rare that we get detention at a drop and hook, but sometimes you get to a customer where it takes forever to get in. Like Amazon is pretty notorious for having long lines to get into their yards. And then sometimes there are some customers that you're doing a drop and hook, but you got to wait for a door, because instead of having you just drop the load in the yard, they want you to drop it in the door. And like we have just a couple of customers where sometimes you got to sit there and wait for them to give you a door. But generally the drop and hooks are pretty quick, under half an hour. The other thing that we get paid for are exceptions. And so some of the exceptions that we get paid for would be for reefers. So if we have a load that requires a reefer, we get an extra $30 for that load, on top of the 48 for the live load. For a hazmat load, we get an extra $25. Now, on the hazmat loads, in addition to the $25 exception that you get for it being a hazmat, we also often will get an extra $10 for either posting the placards or pulling off the placards. Essentially, if the placards are high enough on the container that you need to use a ladder to either post them or pull them off, you get the extra $10. If they're at, like eye level, then you don't get the extra $10. It's just part of the $25 pay. The other thing that the pay covers is for calling in for briefings. So for the reefer loads and the hazmat loads, you got to call into either fleet management or the reefer hotline for a briefing to make sure everything matches up and all your paperwork is good, and that sort of stuff. Some other things that we get exceptions for are for like work that we do that is not necessarily like just a regular load. So for example, if we go to unstack empties, if you're using that empty for a load, you get 15 bucks to unstack the empty. And then you get whatever you're getting for the load that you're moving on. If you're just unstacking empties, like at a stack yard, and then bringing them back and spotting them, in one of our drop yards, you'll get $15 for unstacking, and then $15 for spotting. Sometimes we stack empties at the stack yards, and for that we get like a drop and hook rate, which is $32. Sometimes we will move chassis from one place to another. Generally, like anytime we move equipment from one place to another, whether it's a chassis, whether it's an empty, we get 15 bucks for doing those. Sometimes we also do crosstown moves. So like, let's say the rail yard is pretty full, and they're not accepting any more loaded containers for the time being. We'll drop loaded containers in a staging area, like at one of our drop yards, and then over the next day or two, then drivers will go and they'll shuttle those loads to the rail when the rail is ready to start accepting and loading another train. And those crosstowns are 15 bucks. Sometimes when we get trains unloaded, and the rail yard has like all these loaded containers that need to be delivered to customers, but let's say the customer is not scheduled to get that delivery for another few days, rather than have those loaded containers sitting in the rail yard, we'll move those containers to one of our drop yards and then wait to deliver to the customer. Those are called dwell moves, and for those we get 20 bucks. So that's kind of how the activity pay works. Generally, it works out to pretty much the same thing that guys get paid for when they're working hourly. The only difference is, at least what I like about it is, if you keep moving and you're efficient, you can make more money. So the amount of money I make is not fully, but a lot of it is in my control. So if I am working efficiently and my wheels are moving and I'm doing more loads, I can make more money once you work it out. Like at the end of the day, you kind of figure out what you made hourly that day. Like there are days where I can make, between 25 and 28 bucks an hour. The way that it hurts you is that there are certain days, like every once in a while, like maybe once a week or so, like a bad week, maybe twice a week, you'll get some customers that are just really slow. It takes a long time to unload. And generally when you're getting detention pay, like for me at least, I'm losing money. I don't make as much money when I'm sitting in yards waiting and collecting detention. I can always make more money when I'm on the move. So most days the activity pay for me at least works out better than getting paid hourly. But once or twice a week you'll just have a slow day, and in those cases it kind of hurts you. The other thing that I like about the activity pay is that it seems to level the playing field. So obviously, like, you have a whole fleet of drivers. Like we have like 650 drivers, like at Southgate alone. And, you have a mix. You got, some drivers who work really hard and they're really efficient. You got other drivers who, are kind of lazy and take their sweet ass time, just don't work as hard. And then you got, people in the middle. And what I like about it is, like if I'm doing 3-4 loads, I get paid for it, and, the lazy guys, if they only do 2 or 3 loads, they make what, they work for. And I feel like as an hourly, the lazy guys, they get paid for that 9-10 hours, regardless of how many loads they run. And, there are some guys that work harder than others, and you all make the same money regardless. It doesn't matter if you're a good worker or if you're lazy shit. If you just do the minimum, you're all getting paid the same. So it kind of makes you feel like, your hard work is being valued, and you're getting paid for your hard work more than another guy who is not working as hard. So anyway, that's pretty much how we do it. If you got any questions, post them in the comment section, and have a great day.